The first thing we'll want to do is install a definition. Don't yet worry about how do I define it. Imagine you already got your definition and we want to put it in DataMiner. We want to create an element and see it's actually working. So the first thing we need to do is install that definition. So let's go to our DataMiner setup and have a look how we can do this. Now here I have a smaller setup. Remember, whenever you're developing, you're testing something, it's always best to have a small test setup available, so you will not impact the live sessions that are going on. So I have my smaller setup here, and actually I already have one element running. So this is showing the result that I would like to achieve. Now, of course, I'm going to use a new version of this Kubernetes manager to work in this session. Now, I want to upload my definition, even when I don't have this version yet. I want to be able to upload a newer one or even a complete new development. For this, I'm gonna go to Apps. And in Apps, I'm going to see all the different modules that are available in my system. I'm going to look for protocols and templates because I want to upload and use a specific protocol. In this list, I can actually see all of the protocols that are already installed in my system. So I can see I have a Kubernetes manager and I have a Microsoft platform. Now with these names, I clearly know what the purpose is. So when I'm going to develop a new definition, I'm going to give it a nice name as well. Usually, this will look like a vendor name and the device, the purpose itself. It could be a managing system as well, so like we have with the Kubernetes manager. Now, when you're developing, we're going to develop in iterations. We're going to release in iterations. So you will have different versions, and it could be a beta version, could be a test version, or as I mentioned, you can have different releases. I'm already going to release a first version. You can already use it. You can use it in your production environment. And that's what we can see here. I have a version released, the first one, so a 1.2.1 in this case. The last number will indicate my iteration. The first 3 are actually used to indicate the impact. What is the difference between the different versions that I have? Don't yet worry about what each number means. You will usually see 4 numbers in there. The last one is your iteration. It's safe to update. There's no impact for you or your system. Now you might wonder, well, why would we have an impact? I don't want to have any impact. Well, impacts don't always need to be negative. Usually we don't want any negative impacts, but it could be that, for instance, the firmware has changed from your data source. And in that case, we need to make a drastic change in our logic, in our definition, to get that information there, to make sure that that purpose is fulfilled. Still, there will be a change for me as a user. It could be a change for the system. You will need to use a different communication method. In that case, I want to make sure that everybody can clearly see that there is a change. And then one of those first 3 numbers will change. Now, to get back to the production version, when I select a specific version, I can always right-click and say, well, this one, let's set it as production. Now, production is quite nice because I can actually have all of my elements, my DataMiner elements, running on the production version. So whenever I'm going to upload a newer version, I can set that newer version as production, and I don't have to upload all of or change my elements anymore. They will automatically restart and use the new production version. Now, we're not that far yet. We're still on the first steps. I already have a production version. I don't want to touch this. I want to test my new development. So the first thing I need to do is get it in there. That's the purpose of what we're showing here. So let me undock so you can clearly see how we can do this. Because here on the bottom, I have a small button indicating upload. When I click on this, I can actually see it will allow me different types of files. So to upload a specific protocol definition, I can upload the definition itself, and that's an XML file. Imagine I'm still in development phase. I'm going to change things quite quickly or rapidly. I'm going to use my XML file, do stuff with it, test it, change it, test it again, change again, test again. Now the second type here is a DataMiner protocol package. It's a combination, it's a package of things. So it's a combination of my definition, there could be a help file linked to it, or it can even have a visual overview. And this will be the one that we're going to release. Development is done, we're all happy with the result, and this is what I'm going to deliver to you. It will usually be signed as well, and then you can see the small icon next to it, and it's colored up. In this case, we have the Skyline logo linked to it. Now, in my example, I'm going to use the definition because I'm going to update things as well. So let's select it, and you will actually see it's adding that version. And now I have, in principle, I have 3 different versions. While in reality, there's 2 different versions and one is set as production. You can also see that this is not a released version. It's not ready yet, and it's not signed. It's not delivered to me. Which is the purpose I'm still developing. So the next step that we're going to do once we have our protocol definition in here is to actually create an element. I want to see it working. I want to verify if I can get my data, if it's actually going to do something. So let's close this window and go back to our surveyor. I'm going to make a new view. It will be my testing view. So I can keep things organized a little bit. Let's call it test development. And of course, I will need to make my first element. So what can we see here? We have a name, let's call it test. And I will select my protocol. Of course, I will not use my production version. I'm going to use the version I have just uploaded. So it's my version 2. Now, you've actually seen something change while I selected my protocol. What DataMiner will do is check that definition, what type of communication is used. And in this case, I have an HTTP connection. So I will need to fill in an IP address. And there are actually some other components in there as well. Now let's first fill in the IP address and then have a look on these extra settings. You can see I have an IP port, which is obvious, but I want to highlight that I can change this. I can actually fill in a default value as well. So in my definition, in this particular case, there's a default value, and that's why it's not port 80 popping up. I have a port 6443 filled in. Now another component here, bus address, is actually grayed out. I cannot change it as user. That means in my definition, I can already change some things to make this full kind of wizard nice and easy to use whenever I create my element. Now, another thing I want to highlight is this timeout section. Now, this timeout does not indicate the full timeout. It's not about the indication of indicating the element timeout icon itself. It's linked, however, but what this value means, it's the time that I will wait, or that DataMiner will wait after sending its request. So in my HTTP connection, it's a GET request, for instance, and I will wait this amount of time. In this example, it will wait 5 seconds. If it didn't get any answer, it will retry. It will retry how many times? Well, this number of retries. In this example, it's set to 0. So there are no retries. When will I see my timeout indication on my element? Well, it's when all of my retries have failed. It's still timing out in my commands and responses. And we have passed 30 seconds. So for 30 seconds on a stray end, we still have timeout. Then I will show you an icon. And why not straight away? Well, it could be that there's a glimpse, there's a hiccup, and then only one command timed out. Then I don't want to toggle my timeout indication on my element all the time. I would end up with too many timeout alarms in my alarm console, which are actually not needed. So there's a safety. Again, you can configure all of this yourself. Now, let's move forward and have this element created. I will undock this card so you can actually see where I'm clicking on. I will squeeze this a little bit. Now on the bottom side, you can see some buttons in there, and one of them is create. Now let's hit the create button and see how my elements will look like. I actually can already see that I get some information. I have some data already here. Let's have a look on a data page itself. We have some values in here as well. So on first sight, this is all looking quite well. So I've uploaded my protocol, I've created an element, and now we can get started.